BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And hello and welcome to this special weekend episode of Black Box Online Radio. On the weekends, I've been doing a regular series called Zodiac Killer, New Discovery, The Moraga Letters, and I've been corresponding with an individual who uses the online name Sphere the Cube, also known as Sphery, and he has shared with me some documents that may have been written by the Zodiac Killer. And furthermore, Sphery not only has handwriting samples, he also has a suspect named Robert Volvins. And it is currently October, and I thought, in the tradition of all things Halloween, why not continue with some of the comments that you guys have left about Sphery's observations regarding the Zodiac Killer's Halloween card, which was mailed on October 27th of 1970. The Halloween card has two skeletons on it. One of them is wearing a pumpkin over his lower body, for lack of a better term, and the other one is hanging from a spider web, and that skeleton's eyes have either been removed or some type of red mark has been placed over the area where the eyes should be, and then there are several floating eyes that just appear throughout the left-hand side of the card. So, is there a deeper meaning in the artwork on the Halloween card, or was it arbitrary? Was it never intended to have any strong meaning at all? Sphery took a very bold stance by saying that the Zodiac Killer's Halloween card was meant to represent Jesus Christ, the crucifixion, and that it is indeed paying homage to a crucifix, and that there are several similar images of Jesus portrayed in the exact same way that the skeleton is hanging. The Zodiac also seems to have a very strong connection to the number 13, and you see a 14 on the Halloween card, but there are 13 eyes that are floating, and then you also have the Z13 cipher. The Zodiac would also use 13 in some other correspondences. It appears that that type of theme is going very, very frequently throughout the Zodiac's writing, or that the Zodiac is paying special attention to the number 13. But what do you guys think about this concept of there being some type of Christian symbolism in the Zodiac Killer's writing, as well as the creation of things such as the Halloween card? And moreover, does the Zodiac actually have a lot of thoughtfulness that has been put into these pieces of, his creations, for lack of a better term? So, I think that first we need to be very much aware that this is an unsolved case, and there are several possibilities that could be explored. And I was talking to Sphery recently about that, and he asked me, is he going down the right path with these observations about Christianity and Catholicism being incorporated into the Zodiac Killer letters? And I said, absolutely yes. I mean, it's an unsolved mystery. Leave no stone unturned. Let's explore all of the pathways. Let's explore everything until we actually get some consensus on who the Zodiac Killer was and the actual solutions to the ciphers, as well as possible hidden meanings in the artwork. But I have one comment here from Midnight Ventures, who wants to respond to the question about the Zodiac Killer trying to recreate Jesus Christ on the Halloween card. A lot of reaching here in this one, Ned. I know you said that you don't endorse this theory, which is good. The deeper you dove into the Exorcist connection and possible religion links, the more outrageous this became. I think the Zodiac was so self-centered that he simply referenced the movie The Exorcist in 1974 because it was getting so much attention. People at this time were literally leaving the theaters in shock. The Zodiac was simply jealous. That's my take. So that refers to two different correspondences. The first, the Halloween card from 1970, and the Exorcist letter, which was mailed in January of 1974. That's the one where the Zodiac Killer says, I saw and think the Exorcist was the best satirical comedy ever. He plunged into the billowy wave and the suicide's grave. Tit willow, tit willow, tit willow. I'm paraphrasing, but it also has a note in there saying, P.S. If I don't see this in your paper, I'll do something nasty which you know I'm capable of. That was mailed in 1974. Now, is exorcism something that is Catholic, or is this just talking about a movie and there is no deeper meaning involved? I mean, as we stated very clearly, this is an unsolved case, and Midnight Ventures has taken a rather strong stance saying, no, this is just about attention, that this person isn't trying to fill the zodiac letters with any type of symbolism and any type of direct connection to Christianity, that the zodiac is just an attention seeker who wants to take advantage of people. And I mean, that is something that people have said very clearly in their Zodiac theories. They think the Zodiac killer did this just so he could write these letters and compose a greeting cards, such as the Halloween card, and that people wouldn't notice him, and that even if they're not noticing the real person, they're noticing the Zodiac persona. The murders were just committed so that people would pay attention to this person's ideas. It's all just a game to him. Maybe something like The Most Dangerous Game. So, you guys can respond in the comment section down below. Do you believe that there is a lot of Christian symbolism in the Zodiac Killer letters, or is the Zodiac someone who is heavily influenced by Christianity, or are these just things that he is doing to fuel his own ego, that he only believed in himself? Maybe he wasn't even raised a strong Christian or Catholic or anything like that. He was just someone who was some type of showboat who wanted attention. But I do have another note on the Moraga letters. The Exorcist letter that I was just discussing was mailed in 1974, and in the most recent episode of the Zodiac Killer News Report, Classic Chevy Cat brought up a very interesting challenge question, talking about the authenticity of the timeline, or the legitimacy of the timeline proposed by Spheri, and that is that there is a letter that has been written by the suspect, Robert Volvins, on December 3rd of 1968, saying that he would not be coming home for Christmas, and I made a comment saying that I can more or less verify that Robert Volvins was in the Bay Area at the start of Zodiac activity, and Classic Chevy Cat was asking, well, how do we know this guy's telling the truth about Robert Volvins? And I said that, well, I mean, it appears that Robert Volvins is a real person. I've seen photos of him. I've more or less tracked him down, but I don't even want to share too much about that because Robert Volvins is still alive. We are giving him that name as an alias. But yes, he was in the Bay Area in December of 1968 at the time of the Zodiac Killer's first crime. But then, Spheri made an additional statement that Robert Volvins left the area and returned to his home in the Midwest around 1972 and 73 when there was a halt in Zodiac activity. And what I said was, I was unable to verify that he actually came back to the Bay Area in 1974, and when the Zodiac letters resurface again, the Exorcist letter, as well as the Count Marco letter, also known as the Red Phantom letter, the one that says, Red Phantom, red with rage, those came in 1974. And Spheri did share with me the correspondence that shows Robert Volvins says that he is moving back to the San Francisco Bay Area in 1974, thereabouts. So that, he does have documentation that he can place his suspect in these particular places at the given times. I will give that credit to Spheri, but, I mean, was this guy actually the Zodiac Killer? Well, I mean, again, I do not know. I just wanted to share something that Spheri had shared with me for this particular broadcast. But to continue onward with the Zodiac Killer's Halloween card, E. Nowbuddy says, food for thought. The Halloween card always struck me as a hastily assembled method which was designed to scare the crap out of Paul Avery, and it's a lot to read into it to ascribe the elements to some part of an elaborate, intricately thought-out communication brimming with substantial clues. One man's opinion, though. Meaning that the Zodiac Killer mailed the Halloween card. It's written to Paul Avery, the journalist and reporter, and his name is misspelled Paul Averly, Averly. There's also a odd symbol that has been placed on there that may have come from Red Rider, or it might be Celtic letters, or it might be someone's initials that have been assembled in a particular way. But the Halloween card says, I know you ache to know my name, but then, why spoil the game? So, what is that? What is that? Is that the Zodiac Killer just trying to scare Paul Avery, saying, I'm watching you, I mean, I can kill you at any time? Is that what the intention was? Or is this something that needs to be looked at very carefully? And is it just filled with symbols and ideas? And the Zodiac is cluing in people to his identity in a very rough and twisted way that no one other than the real killer would actually figure out. And you can share your ideas in the comment section down below, but it seems that E. Nobody is leaning toward the former of those two, that this was something that is just meant to scare Paul Avery. And, I mean, E. Nobody can correct me, but it seems like he is saying that it is just two skeletons that are on the card. The pumpkin was pasted on, the skeleton hanging from the spider web was pasted on. And yes, their eyes, maybe meaning that, like, I'm watching you, but that's a very big difference than saying that the skeleton hanging from the spider web is meant to represent Jesus Christ. I mean, what do you guys think? Like, which one do you agree with? And, do you think that the Zodiac is trying to show something about his Catholic upbringing? And because I've had the opportunity to talk to Spheri, and this series is based on his observations about the Zodiac Killer mystery, he really wants to show that it's not as simple as just saying that, okay, well, he was raised Catholic, or he was raised in some denomination of Christianity, therefore there are all these Christian clues in the Zodiac mystery. These would have been things that had meaning to him, that had meaning to the people around him, particularly his siblings. Because throughout this series, the Moraga letters, I've talked about how Spheri has found correspondences that have been from Robert Volvins' sister, as well as two of his brothers. And I've stated very clearly that the closest handwriting samples that I think resemble the Zodiac Killer's handwriting came from one of the brothers of Robert Volvins, and that on the Halloween card there are the intersecting words slaves in paradise, and one of the I guess you would call it the greeting on a letter that says Dear Thomas and Jean intersects on the letter A, the way that slaves in paradise intersect on the letter A, and that was written by a different brother of Robert Volvins. And some of the Zodiac Killer's insertion of words using like arrow points looks quite similar to something that was written by the sister of Robert Volvins. So I think a core part of Spheri's theory, speaking on his behalf, is that these would have been things that he would have learned about from his family members, or they would have been very normal within that group of siblings to arrange words like this, and he was using those elements and influences to create the Zodiac Killer persona. And absolutely anybody outside of the family wouldn't think twice about it. They wouldn't know anything about it. They wouldn't know that this is how the siblings in the Volvins family used to write their letters, and this is their little inside joke, so to speak. I mean, I think that that's very interesting, that even if we just examine it from a broader perspective, that was the Zodiac Killer leaving clues that only he or his closest family members would be able to interpret. And most people zone in on the slaves in paradise angle because it also says the keywords by rope, by knife, by gun, by fire. And Tahoe 27 has tracked that down to the Tim Holt comic, The Wheel of Death, which features Tim Holt and his Red Mask character. And there's something called The Wheel of Death, which is being spun by Lady Doom, and it features the same words, by rope, by knife, by gun, by fire. And Wildfire99 has responded by saying that the Halloween card says you are doomed, and that is a clue to the Wheel of Doom. Okay. Even if it's called the Wheel of Death, as I said very clearly, her name is Lady Doom, so is that a direct reference? Neil Arnold from runs a really good Zodiac Killer Facebook group says, You Are Doomed has various sources, including a Batman comic, Wildfire99 responded by saying, "Does a Batman comic have the words 'by rope, by knife, by gun, by fire'? Methinks not. And you're a funny guy." So which one is it? Which one is it? Is that a direct reference to Lady Doom, or is it not when the Zodiac Killer says you are doomed? Now, I think that the reason why people have an issue with the way Wildfire99 is presenting this information is he is stating it as an absolute fact. You are doomed as a clue to the Wheel of Doom, as opposed to presenting it as a possibility. Because there's a very big difference between just saying, well, maybe it happened this way, maybe this is what the killer was thinking, and saying, absolutely 100% this is what the killer was thinking. And on that note, we also have one that comes to us from Batman 66. Maybe Batman can clue us in onto the origin of the You Are Doomed, the Batman comic in particular. But Batman 66 says, "Can't envision the Zodiac Killer being Catholic. If anything, he seemed a Crowley neophyte. Could the 14 on the Halloween card mean the 4 young people he attacked or thought that he killed at the time, the 2 in July and September? He may have just assumed that they were all still in their teenage years. Concerning this mysterious Robert Volvins, couldn't his DNA be attained somehow, while still keeping his true identity private, especially in the day of tech and especially in the tech day and age? Examples: Ancestry, GEDmatch, Discarded, Trash, etc. I think it would be wise before he were to pass and maybe be cremated." Now that would be up to Spheri, if he would like to truly investigate that further. And as I said, I've been able to track Robert Volvins down rather easily because I've had some more extensive correspondences with Spheri, and I have not made any attempt to contact him because, as I said, private citizen, but I think Spheri would have more access to that. And as far as the authenticity of the Zodiac's letters, this is the comment that I wanted to get to. Aaron Aragon writes, "This is interesting speculation about Jesus and the Halloween card, but are we reading too much into this maniac's letters? I still have doubts that any of the Zodiac's letters in the 1970s were authentic. Zodiac was a comic book B-movie fanatic and hardly an intellectual powerhouse. And no, I'm Catholic, and no way in hell do I detect a Catholic connection." Alright, Aaron has taken a very strong stance, and I do appreciate that. And, as I even said some things that would be on Aaron's side. Number one, that symbol that everybody thinks is initials or Celtic letters put together, or it is the killer's signature. That is a symbol that was used by Red Rider. Not exactly. There's a bit of a modification. But think about what we just said in regards to the Death Wheel. The Wheel of Death. The by rope, by knife, by gun, by fire. That is from a Tim Holt comic book. Allegedly, right? A very similar thing that uses those words. And that even Slaves in Paradise might not have been the Zodiac's own original idea. That could have come from Egyptian mythology, or maybe some type of Filipino folklore, or just the whole concept of how this person wants to have some type of power over people. And on the last Zodiac Killer news report, which comes out every Monday, I pointed out that the Axeman of New Orleans mailed a letter in 1919 which says that he wants people to keep him company when he is in hell, that he's this demon out of hell and he wants to kill people and they will keep him company. That's quite similar to Slaves in Paradise. Those whom I have killed will be my slaves. Again, not 100%, it's not identical, but it is similar. And Spheri responded to Aaron Aragon's statement about how there is no Catholic influence on the Zodiac Killer's letters, particularly the Halloween card. Sphere the Q writes, "Just a footnote, the suspect in the Moraga letters had an extensive collection of Mad magazines as well as comic books and detective pulp, while also being an intellectual powerhouse." And then Aaron simply responded by saying, interesting. Now, we also should bear in mind that at the time the Halloween card was mailed, Robert Volvins would have been 23 years old. And, when I was 23, absolutely, I still had connections to my comic books that I had growing up. I still do. They're just still in my box back in West Virginia, exactly where I left them, more or less, since I was 23 years old. But I think that this would have all been very fresh in his mind. For Robert Volvins, if for someone who's familiar with comic books and magazines and these science fiction connections, or just things that a teenager would truly appreciate. Because do you notice that with a lot of the Zodiac Killer's material? Some of it could be literary, some of it could be very deep and thoughtful, and other things are, well, this dude just stole it from a comic book. He just stole it from some type of magazine. They aren't even his ideas. Maybe he was familiar with the Axeman of New Orleans, Jack the Ripper, and the Phantom Killer. Possibly, right? And that he's also reading about other serial killers and then using those things, using those stories as a playbook, but trying to be more expansive than the Axeman or the Phantom Killer, but absolutely not more expansive than Jack the Ripper. I mean, the Ripper mutilated his victims and cut their bodies apart. The Zodiac was practically terrified of touching a dead body. But I think Aaron Aragon left a more interesting part of his comment when he says that how do we know that these letters in the 1970s were authentic? And if you're going to include the cards, we also have to note the Halloween card was mailed in 1970. I still have doubts of any of the Zodiac's letters in the 1970s being authentic. Well, I had the opportunity to discuss this with Tom Voigt once, asking the same question, and what Tom Voigt said was that we always have to remember that the authorities know more than we do. They have information that we do not, and if they believe that something is authentic, they're perhaps coming from a place of reason, or they know why this thing should be viewed as authentic. So that's what I tend to think, and I've always thought the Halloween card was an authentic communication. Now, some of the other cards, like the 1990 Eureka card, which is 20 years later, maybe not. I mean, I've definitely thought about it, but I think the Halloween card is contemporary. It has a lot of esoteric Zodiac material in it, as well as it's not so complicated to the point where it's immediately coming from somebody else, or there isn't a dead giveaway that it is coming from a person who was not the Zodiac Killer. If I had to bet my life on it now, I would say that the Halloween card was authentic, that it actually does have a genuine Zodiac Killer connection. But, I mean, I've had my doubts about some of the other letters in the 1970s, even the Exorcist letter, because of the time gap. And this is very important. This is what I was actually discussing with Tom Voigt once, when he shared with me that the writer's palm, the side palm print, was lifted from the 1974 Exorcist letter, and perhaps that is the only time that it was lifted. And if you go back and watch some of those older documentaries about Arthur Lee Allen, they talk about how Arthur Lee Allen was exonerated because of DNA, fingerprints, handwriting, and his side palm print, also known as writer's palm, that back in the 1970s they didn't have ability to look at how the side of your palm is pressed against the paper when you're writing it, when you're writing the letter, but they can use that just like a fingerprint now, and they can extract that type of information from letters, but the only letter that they were able to find a solid side palm print from was the 1974 Exorcist letter, and that is, definitely some fodder for the people who think that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac, because, well, the 1974 Exorcist letter, well, what about all the others that came in the 1960s and 70s? Like, meaning that 1970 or the 1971 Pleasanton letter and so on? What about all of those that came before that? Were they written by the same person, or were they not? And the next point on that is that DNA seems rather unlikely in the Zodiac Killer mystery. Mike Rodelli, author of In the Shadow of Mount Diablo and the Hunt for Zodiac, has been the loudest voice talking about how they do not have the killer's DNA, and the Zodiac may not have even sealed the envelopes using saliva. There may be no saliva DNA at all. He most likely sealed the envelopes with water and a sponge, which was common at the time, and I think that there's a rather defendable case for that, and maybe we're almost reaching some type of consensus in the DNA, on the DNA issue, meaning that there is DNA that has been extracted from multiple Zodiac correspondences, but none of it matches, meaning that it's a different person's DNA, and if you're going to extract touch DNA from the stamp of one of the Zodiac Killer's envelopes, that's the outside, not the inside, not the underside even. The possibility of contamination is extraordinarily high, and I do cite Ray Grant for some of this analysis. Ray Grant worked in the Postal Service for many years, so meaning that the possibility of contamination is overwhelming, and maybe they do not have any solid samples of the Zodiac Killer's DNA. But this isn't even about Arthur Lee Allen or any other Zodiac Killer suspect, or even Robert Volvins. I mean, did the Zodiac Killer write the Halloween card or not? I'm definitely thinking yes, and that it's not a twisted prank, but the question that I would like to know the answer to is, are these symbols on the Zodiac Killer's Halloween card revealing some type of deep message, or are they just things that are meant to taunt Paul Avery? I mean, you guys can share in the comment section down below, and I think that it's worth exploring. Even if you have a particular theory or an idea or a hypothesis or a suggestion, I think that it's good to put your idea out there, because you might be onto something. There might be some type of insight that you have that could actually lead to a bigger discovery. But what do you think about the observations on the Halloween card? And do you think that the Zodiac Killer is trying to clue people into a lot of Christianity, or that he had a strong Christian upbringing, maybe even a Catholic upbringing? And some of the other examples that I've talked about in the past are the words Christmas are spelled Christmas in multiple Zodiac correspondences, Christmass, Christmas. And also, in the most recent segment, Spheri was really trying to talk about how he thought that the Zodiac Killer was trying to become the false prophet, and that he has this sick, twisted fantasy of being very powerful, even more powerful than the devil, and he is actually acting it out. He's actually trying to become the false prophet, and the reason why there are all these things that having like the skeleton looking like it's from the crucifixion is because he is trying to believe either intentional or unintentional Christian or Catholic references in his communications. But what do you think about any of those particular observations? You can put your ideas in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for listening, and please tune in next time for the Zodiac Killer News Report on Monday. Alright, that's all for me now. I will see you guys over on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Goodbye.